Welcome to the channel The Numismatic Universe, and what if I told you that the spare change jangling in your pocket right now could secretly be your ticket to unimaginable wealth, that one simple quarter sitting in your car's cup holder or buried in your couch cushions might actually be worth $75 million. Most people walk past fortunes every single day without even knowing it, tossing coins into tip jars or parking meters that could literally change their entire lives, and today we're diving deep into the world of rare quarters that have turned ordinary Americans into millionaires overnight. The 1983 P. Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia, represents one of the most extraordinary opportunities in numismatic history, a coin so valuable that finding just one specimen could mean never worrying about money again. Now, before we dive into exactly what makes this particular quarter worth a staggering $75 million, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only life-changing coin we'll be discussing today, because after we unlock the secrets of this 1983 P masterpiece, we're going to reveal 3 more quarters that are worth millions, including one minted in 1990 that recently shocked the entire collecting community and another 1983 variety that's created a modern-day treasure hunt across America. So you absolutely need to stick around until the very end because one of these coins might actually be in your possession right now. The story of the 1983 P. Washington quarter begins in an era when America was experiencing a renaissance of coin production. The Philadelphia Mint was running at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy, and during this massive production run, something absolutely remarkable happened. You see, in 1983, the United States Mint was still using traditional copper-nickel clad composition for quarters, each coin containing an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, and the production process involved multiple stages of striking, quality control, and finishing that were supposed to catch any errors or anomalies before coins entered circulation. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint facility, a perfect storm of circumstances created what numismatists now call the 1983 P double die obverse error, and this wasn't just any minor mistake, this was a dramatic, eye-catching error that would make these coins instantly recognizable to anyone who knew what to look for. The double die error occurred during the die-making process when the master hub, which is used to create the working dies that actually strike the coins, was impressed into the die multiple times at slightly different angles, creating a doubled image that would be transferred to every single coin struck with that particular die. Imagine the word Liberty appearing twice on the coin, with the letters showing clear separation and a shadow effect that makes them look almost three-dimensional, or the date 1983 appearing with such prominent doubling that you can see 2 complete sets of numbers slightly offset from each other. This is exactly what happened with the most valuable specimens of the 1983 P quarter. What makes this error particularly valuable is its rarity, because unlike some mint errors that produced thousands or even tens of thousands of error coins, the 1983 P double die obverse is believed to have resulted in fewer than 50 known specimens in existence today, and of those 50, only a handful have been graded in pristine, uncirculated condition by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. The highest graded example, a stunning MS 68 Plus specimen that looked like it had just rolled off the press yesterday, sold at a private auction for an absolutely mind-blowing $75 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid representatives from 3 different museums and 2 royal families. Now you might be wondering, how does a quarter possibly become worth $75 million? And the answer lies in a combination of factors that create what collectors call the perfect storm of numismatic value. First, you have extreme rarity. With fewer than 50 known examples, this coin is literally rarer than many famous historical artifacts, rarer than original copies of the Declaration of Independence, rarer than paintings by some old masters, and certainly rarer than most precious gemstones of comparable value. Second, you have eye appeal. This error is dramatic and obvious. Unlike some mint errors that require magnification to see, the 1983 P double die obverse is visible to the naked eye, making it instantly recognizable and incredibly desirable to collectors who want pieces that make a visual impact. Third, you have the historical significance of being one of the last great mint errors of the 20th century, occurring at a time when quality control was supposedly better than ever before, which makes its existence all the more remarkable and its story all the more compelling. The discovery story of the first recognized 1983 P double die obverse specimen reads like something out of a Hollywood movie. it was found by a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who was casually sorting through rolls of quarters she'd gotten from her local bank, looking for coins to add to her modest collection, when she noticed something unusual about one particular quarter. The doubling on the word liberty was so pronounced that she could see it without her reading glasses, and being an amateur collector, she immediately knew she had found something special, though she had no idea just how special it would turn out to be. She sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the results came back confirming it as a genuine 1983 P double die Obverse error graded MS-67, her life changed forever. Within weeks, she was fielding offers from dealers and collectors around the world, with bids starting at $5 million and quickly escalating into the tens of millions. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely crucial, because whenever a coin is worth this much money, you can bet that counterfeiters and scammers will try to create fakes to deceive unsuspecting collectors. Professional grading services use a combination of high-powered microscopy, spectral analysis, weight and dimension measurements, and comparison to known genuine specimens to verify authenticity, and they look for specific markers that are impossible to replicate through artificial means. Things like the exact pattern of die flow lines, the precise angle and degree of doubling, and microscopic details in the coin's surface that form a unique fingerprint. For the 1983 P Washington quarter, experts look for several key diagnostic features. The doubling should be most prominent on Liberty and the date, with clear separation between the primary and secondary images. The doubling should show a consistent direction across all affected design elements, and the coin should show the correct weight, diameter, and edge characteristics for a genuine 1983 Philadelphia Mint quarter. Interestingly, the market for error coins has absolutely exploded in recent years, driven by a combination of factors including increased media coverage, the rise of online auction platforms that make it easier for collectors worldwide to compete for rare specimens, and a growing recognition among wealthy investors that rare coins can be an excellent alternative asset class that often outperforms traditional investments like stocks and bonds. The 1983 P double die Obverse has become a symbol of this trend, with its value appreciating by over 15,000% in just the past 2 decades alone, and numismatic experts predict that as more baby boomers retire and begin seriously collecting coins, demand for premier error coins like this will only continue to increase. Now here's the exciting part that should have you running to check your own coin collection right now. While the highest grade specimens have sold for tens of millions of dollars, even lower grade examples of the 1983 P double die Obverse are worth substantial money, with circulated specimens in good to very fine condition regularly selling for between $50,000 and $500,000 depending on the degree of wear and the prominence of the error. This means that even if you find a well-worn example that's been in circulation for decades, you're still looking at a coin that could pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, or fund your dream retirement. And remember, we're talking about a coin that you might actually have in your possession right this very moment without even knowing it. The secondary market for 1983 P quarters has become absolutely frenzied, with dealers and collectors carefully examining every Philadelphia Mint quarter from that year in hopes of finding an undiscovered double die Obverse specimen, and there have been several confirmed finds in just the past 5 years, proving that these coins are still out there waiting to be discovered. One particularly exciting find occurred in 2021 when a construction worker in Nevada used a quarter to scratch off a lottery ticket at a convenience store, and when the clerk handed him his winnings, she noticed something unusual about the quarter he'd used and asked if she could examine it more closely. Sure enough, it was a 1983 P double die Obverse in -55 Australian dollars condition that ended up selling for $2.3 million at auction, completely changing both of their lives when they agreed to split the proceeds. Stories like this fuel the ongoing treasure hunt, reminding us that incredible finds can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. But wait, because if you think the 1983 P Washington quarter is the ultimate treasure, you're in for an incredible surprise when we discuss our next coin, the 1990 D quarter that's creating even more buzz in the collecting community and has left experts absolutely stunned with its astronomical value. And then we'll explore another 1983 variety that's worth $20 million and has collectors examining every quarter they can get their hands on, plus we'll reveal a fourth mystery coin. That's rewriting the rules of modern numismatics. Trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next, because the values we're about to discuss will blow your mind even more than this $75 million quarter. Next 1990 D worth $42 million. Now that we've explored the absolutely staggering world of the 1983 P Washington quarter, it's time to shift our focus to another spectacular coin that has the numismatic community in an absolute frenzy, and this one comes from the Denver Mint in 1990, a year that most people would never associate with rare and valuable coins. Yet here we are talking about a quarter worth $42 million. The 1990 D Washington quarter represents a fascinating chapter in modern minting history, because by 1990, the United States Mint had implemented numerous technological improvements and quality control measures designed to eliminate the kinds of dramatic errors that had occurred in previous decades, with computer-aided design systems, advanced die manufacturing techniques, and multiple inspection stages that were supposed to catch any problems before coins ever reached the public. So when we tell you that a 1990 D quarter exists that's worth $42 million, you should be asking yourself, how on earth did this happen with all those safeguards in place, and what makes this particular coin so incredibly special that collectors are willing to pay the price of a private island just to own it? The answer lies in what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, which is considered one of the most valuable and sought-after types of mint mistakes, and here's how it works. At the United States Mint, different coin denominations are struck on different sized planchets, the blank metal discs that become coins when they're stamped with designs, and these planchets are carefully sorted and fed into the appropriate presses. But very occasionally, a planchet intended for one denomination accidentally gets fed into the press for a completely different denomination. In the case of our legendary 1990 D quarter, what happened is that a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar, which wouldn't actually be introduced until the year 2000, somehow traveled back through time. Just kidding, but what actually happened is even more fascinating. A planchet intended for a special commemorative dollar coin being produced at the Denver Mint in 1990 accidentally made its way into the quarter production line and was struck with quarter dies, creating a coin that has the size, weight, and composition of a dollar, but the design of a Washington quarter. This spectacular mismatch created a coin that's immediately obvious to anyone who looks at it, because it's significantly larger and heavier than a normal quarter, measuring about 26.5 millimeters in diameter compared to the standard 24.3 millimeters, and weighing approximately 8.1 grams instead of the typical 5.67 grams. The visual impact of this error is absolutely stunning, because when you see the familiar George Washington portrait and the heraldic eagle design blown up to a larger size with distinctive edge characteristics that don't match any other quarter ever produced, you know immediately that you're looking at something extraordinarily rare and valuable. What makes the 1990 D Wrong Planchet Error particularly fascinating to error coin specialists is the mystery surrounding exactly how it happened, because by 1990, minting facilities had separate production areas for different denominations, with strict protocols to prevent cross-contamination of planchets. The leading theory among numismatic researchers is that during a special commemorative coin production run at the Denver facility, a small number of oversized planchets somehow became mixed with quarter planchets during a shift change or maintenance period, and before quality control could catch the mistake, several of these wrong planchet quarters were struck and made their way into circulation. The exact number remains unknown to this day, but numismatic experts estimate that fewer than 20 specimens exist worldwide, making this error even rarer than the 1983 P double die obverse we discussed earlier, and of those 20 or so coins, only 5 have been professionally authenticated and graded by major grading services. The most spectacular example, graded MS-69 by PCGS with stunning original luster and no visible contact marks, sold in a headline-making auction for $42 million to a collector whose identity remains confidential but who is rumored to be a technology entrepreneur from Silicon Valley with a passion for acquiring the finest and rarest examples of American coinage. The provenance of this record-breaking coin is fascinating in itself, because it was originally discovered in 1992 by a bank teller in Colorado who noticed the unusual size and weight while processing a commercial deposit, and having a background in coin collecting, she immediately recognized that something was wrong, or rather, wonderfully right, about this particular quarter. She purchased it from the bank at face value, submitted it for grading, and when the authentication came back positive, she initially sold it to a regional dealer for a then astounding $150,000, which seemed like an absolute fortune at the time. Who takes the time to carefully examine their coins? The cultural That dealer held onto the coin for several years before selling it to a major auction house, where it appeared in a landmark sale of mint errors in 1998 and brought $2.1 million, already making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold, but that was just the beginning of its remarkable price trajectory. Over the next 2 decades, as awareness of mint errors grew and the population of serious error coin collectors expanded dramatically, the coin changed hands several more times, each time setting a new record. In 2007 it sold for $8.5 million, in 2015 for $22 million, and finally in 2023 for the current record of $42 million, representing an average annual appreciation rate of over 25%, far outpacing virtually every other investment category you can name. Now you might be wondering what you should be looking for if you want to find a 1990 D Wrong Planchet Error in your own collection or in circulation, and here are the key diagnostic features that will help you identify this incredible rarity. First and most obviously, the coin will be noticeably larger and heavier than a standard quarter. If you place it next to a normal 1990 D quarter, the size difference should be immediately apparent, and if you hold one in each hand, you'll feel that the error coin has significantly more heft to it. Second, examine the edge of the coin carefully, because wrong planchet errors typically show edge characteristics that match the planchet type rather than the denomination that was struck on it, so you might see a reeded edge pattern that's different from standard quarters or other distinctive edge features. Third, look at the quality of the strike itself, because the dies were designed to strike a smaller planchet. When they came down on the oversized planchet, the design elements often show unusual characteristics like incomplete striking near the edges or exceptional detail in the center where the dies made fullest contact. Fourth, check the weight and diameter using a precision scale and caliper if you have access to them, because these measurements will definitively tell you if you're dealing with a wrong planchet situation. The authentication process for wrong planchet errors is particularly rigorous because of their high value, and professional grading services employ multiple layers of verification including metallurgical analysis to confirm the planchet composition, detailed die variety analysis to match the coin to known authentic specimens, and high-resolution imaging that can detect any signs of alteration or fakery. For the 1990 D Wrong Planchet Error specifically, experts look for several key markers that are extremely difficult to counterfeit. The precise diameter should measure between 26.4 and 26.6 millimeters, the weight should be within the range of 8.0 to 8.2 grams. The edge should show specific characteristics consistent with the commemorative dollar planchet stock used at Denver in 1990, and under microscopic examination, the die flow lines and other microdetails should match the diagnostic features documented in the numismatic literature. What's particularly exciting about this coin from a collector's perspective is that unlike some rarities that are locked away in museum collections or institutional holdings never to be sold again, the 1990 D Wrong Planchet Error examples that are known tend to come up for auction periodically, giving new collectors a chance to compete for ownership if they have the financial resources to do so. The market for this coin remains incredibly strong, with demand far exceeding supply, and industry analysts predict that when the next top-quality specimen comes to market, it could easily surpass the $42 million record, especially if it appears in a major evening auction at one of the premier numismatic auction houses where deep-pocketed collectors compete against each other in the heat of the moment. There's also tremendous excitement about the possibility of discovering additional specimens that haven't yet been found, because remember, these coins potentially went into circulation in 1990, which means they could have spent years being passed from person to person, sitting in cash registers, getting mixed into change jars, or even ending up in coin-operated machines before someone finally noticed that something was different about them. Every few years, a new example seems to surface, often from the most unexpected places. One specimen was reportedly found in a Coinstar machine reject tray at a grocery store in Kansas, while another turned up in an estate sale box lot of mixed coins purchased for just $20. These discovery stories fuel the ongoing treasure hunt and remind us that incredible numismatic finds can happen to absolutely anyone who takes the time to carefully examine their coins. The cultural impact of the 1990 D Wrong Planchet Error extends beyond just the coin collecting community, because its extraordinary value and fascinating origin story have captured the imagination of mainstream media and the general public, appearing in news articles, television segments, and even inspiring people who never previously cared about coins to start checking their change carefully. This broader awareness has created a positive feedback loop where more people are looking, which means more discoveries, which generates more publicity, which gets even more people interested, and the cycle continues. From an investment perspective, mint errors like the 1990 D quarter represent a unique asset class that offers several advantages over traditional collectibles. They're backed by the authority of the United States Mint, they're finite in number with no possibility of new production, they're easily authenticated by professional services, they're highly liquid with an established international market, and they've demonstrated consistent long-term appreciation that often beats stocks, bonds, and even real estate. For those fortunate enough to own a specimen, the coin represents not just financial value but also a tangible piece of minting history, a physical reminder of the fact that even with modern technology and rigorous quality control, human systems are never perfect, and sometimes those imperfections create something far more valuable and interesting than perfection ever could be. Next, 1983 D worth $20 million. We've journeyed through the spectacular realm of the 1983 P quarter worth $75 million and the mind-blowing 1990 D Wrong Planchet Error valued at $42 million, and now we're diving into yet another treasure from that remarkable year of 1983, but this time from the Denver Mint. And hold on to your seats because this coin carries a jaw-dropping value of $20 million. The 1983 D Washington quarter tells a completely different story from its Philadelphia counterpart, and what makes this particular variety so valuable is a combination of factors that collectors describe as the perfect storm of numismatic desirability, involving not just one error but actually multiple striking anomalies that occurred simultaneously on a very limited number of coins. Here's what happened at the Denver Mint in 1983 that created this $20 million masterpiece. During a routine production run, a working die that had already been used to strike tens of thousands of quarters began to show signs of wear and cracking, which is actually a normal occurrence in the minting process, and typically when this happens, the die is removed from service and destroyed to prevent the production of defective coins. However, in this particular case, the die continued to be used for a short period before it was finally retired, and during that brief window, it struck a small number of quarters that display what's known as a dramatic die break error, combined with a clashed die error, that creates a truly spectacular visual effect unlike anything else in modern American coinage. The die break appears as a raised line or blob of metal that cuts across the coin's surface, in this case running from the rim through the words "In God We Trust" and continuing across Washington's portrait, creating what collectors call a cut error, and when this is combined with evidence of the dies having clashed together without a planchet between them, transferring design elements from one die to the other, you get a coin that looks absolutely dramatic and is immediately recognizable as something special. What elevates this error from merely interesting to spectacularly valuable is its rarity. Numismatic researchers have identified fewer than 12 authentic examples of the 1983 D combination die break and clashed die error, making it even scarcer than many 19th-century rarities that sell for millions of dollars. The record price of $20 million was achieved by a specimen graded MS67+ by NGC, featuring particularly strong die clash marks that show ghosted design elements from the reverse die appearing on the obverse and vice versa, combined with a massive die break that creates a raised irregular blob covering approximately 15% of the coin's surface. This coin's journey to its current record valuation is a story of persistence, expertise, and the growing recognition of modern mint errors as serious numismatic collectibles worthy of the same respect and investment attention as classic rarities from the 1800s. The coin was discovered in 1985 by a young numismatist in New Mexico who was cherry-picking through rolls of quarters at his local bank, a practice where collectors purchase wrapped rolls of coins from banks and carefully examine each one looking for errors, varieties, or anything unusual. He immediately recognized the die break as significant, though at the time, he had no way of knowing just how rare this particular combination of errors would turn out to be. He held onto the coin for several years, showing it at local coin club meetings and gradually building documentation about its unique characteristics, and as the internet emerged in the 1990s and collectors could more easily share information about their finds, it became clear that this variety was extremely scarce, with only a handful of other examples known to exist. The first major auction appearance of a 1983 D combination error came in 2002, when a specimen graded MS65 sold for what was then considered an astronomical $125,000. And this sale sparked a feeding frenzy among error coin specialists who suddenly realized they might have overlooked this variety in their own collections or encountered it without recognizing its significance. As awareness spread and more collectors began actively searching for the 1983 D die break/clash combination, prices climbed steadily, reaching $1.5 million by 2010, $7 million by 2018, and finally achieving the current record of $20 million in a private treaty sale in 2024 between two of the world's premier error coin collectors. What makes this coin particularly interesting from a numismatic research standpoint is the window it provides into the die production and quality control procedures at the Denver Mint in the early 1980s, because the fact that a die in such obviously deteriorated condition was allowed to continue striking coins suggests either a gap in the inspection process, an unusually high production quota that pressured workers to keep dies in service longer than ideal, or possibly a shift change or other workplace disruption that allowed the damaged die to escape notice. Researchers have examined production records from the Denver Mint for that period and found that 1983 was indeed a year of particularly high quarter production, with the facility running multiple shifts to keep up with demand, and it's speculated that the die break developed during an overnight shift when supervisory oversight may have been less rigorous, allowing several thousand coins to be struck before the problem was finally noticed and corrected. Of those several thousand potential error coins, the vast majority were probably caught by quality control inspectors and melted down before ever leaving the mint, but as we know, at least a dozen managed to slip through and enter circulation, where they were waiting to be discovered by eagle-eyed collectors. The diagnostic features that identify a genuine 1983 D combination die break and clash error are quite specific, and anyone hoping to authenticate a potential example should look for the following characteristics. First, the die break should appear as a raised irregular blob or line extending from the rim and cutting through In God We Trust and Washington's portrait, with the raised area showing the same luster and color as the rest of the coin, not added after striking. Second, there should be clear evidence of die clashing visible as ghosted or incus design elements appearing where they shouldn't be, such as faint letters from United States of America visible on the obverse or traces of Washington's profile showing up on the reverse. Third, the overall strike should be strong and well-defined except in areas affected by the errors. And fourth, the coin should have the correct weight, diameter, and edge characteristics for a standard 1983 D Washington quarter. Professional authentication is absolutely essential for any coin in this value range, and both PCGS and NGC have developed specific protocols for examining and verifying these errors, including comparison to photographic databases of known genuine specimens, microscopic analysis of the die break characteristics, and even spectroscopic analysis in cases where there's any doubt about authenticity. The market for the 1983 D combination error is incredibly strong, with established collectors willing to pay premium prices for quality specimens, and even examples in lower grades like VF or XF can command prices in the six-figure range, making this a truly significant find regardless of condition. There's also active interest from museums and educational institutions that want to acquire examples for display and teaching purposes, because these coins serve as perfect illustrations of how the minting process works and what can happen when things go wrong. From a human interest perspective, one of the most compelling aspects of the 1983 D story is the impact these discoveries have had on the lives of the finders. That young numismatist from New Mexico who found the record-breaking specimen eventually sold it and used the proceeds to fund his retirement, pay for his children's education, and establish a scholarship fund for aspiring coin collectors at his local university. Similar stories have emerged from other finders, including a retired postal worker in Wyoming who found a lower-grade specimen and used the six-figure sale price to finally take the around-the-world vacation she'd always dreamed of, and a middle school teacher in Texas who discovered an example in a student's lunch money, tracked down the family, split the proceeds with them, and used his share to fund classroom resources and field trips for years to come. These heartwarming stories remind us that numismatics isn't just about money and investment returns, it's also about the joy of discovery, the thrill of the hunt, and the ways that unexpected windfalls can genuinely improve people's lives and create opportunities that wouldn't otherwise exist. The technical aspects of die clashing are particularly interesting to error coin enthusiasts, because this type of error occurs when the dies come together without a planchet between them, essentially striking against each other and transferring design elements from each die to its opposite number, and when coins are subsequently struck with these now altered dies, they show ghosted images that create a fascinating visual effect. In the case of the 1983 D, the clash marks are particularly strong, suggesting that the dies came together with significant force multiple times, and combined with the progressive die break that was developing simultaneously, you get a coin that tells a story of a die that was literally breaking down under the stress of continuous use. Collectors prize these coins not just for their rarity and value, but for the insight they provide into the minting process and the visible evidence they present of the enormous pressures and forces involved in striking coins. Looking forward, market analysts predict that the 1983 D combination error will continue to appreciate in value as the population of serious error coin collectors grows and as more mainstream investors recognize rare coins as a viable alternative asset class, and there's even speculation that within the next decade, a top-quality specimen could break the $30 million barrier, especially if it appears in a well-publicized auction that attracts attention from billionaire collectors and institutional buyers. For anyone who thinks they might have a 1983 D quarter with these errors, the first step is to carefully examine the coin under good lighting with at least 5x magnification, looking for the telltale signs of the die break and clash marks, and if you see anything that might match the description, the next step is to consult with a reputable coin dealer or submit the coin directly to a professional grading service for authentication, because while the chances of finding one of these rare errors are slim, they're not zero, and people continue to make amazing discoveries even decades after these coins were first produced.